Hello, intelligent beings of the etherweb! Since the first visits to Tokyo, I found an attraction to one particular area of the city, to an area not quite overlooked but put in sort of the second grade among travelers to Tokyo. On today's Lonely Planet website, it's not in the top 10 list of the neighborhoods. It's not in top 10 areas listed on Japan National Tourist Organization Tokyo page. Utagawa Hiroshige's 100 Views of Tokyo almost entirely missed the area, as it didn't quite exist in Edo period. It's Odaiba, an artificial island constructed in modern form in post-World War II Japan and futuristically redeveloped in 1990s. There are multiple reasons why the area feels somehow special. It might be due to the presence of Tokyo Big Sight Exhibition Center, where the childhood dream of visiting International Robot Exhibition realized in 2017 and 2019. It might be due to a gorgeous Team-Lab borderless projection art museum. It might be due to the fact that Aqua City Odaiba Mall is the place where the first long-term public deployment of an android robot Junco Chihira takes place, an android often visited and filmed by myself. It might be due to small things, like this line, straight from a racing game. It might be due to the presence of the Statue of Liberty nearby to Aqua City Odaiba, the original of which is barred from my gaze. It's all of that, and more, but most likely, the feelings to the place are there because of the sea, which for me, a sea-like entity, is something that is deeply missed. Odaiba, with Odaiba Marine Park, Odaiba Kaihin-koen, and close proximity to the rest of the city, turned out to be the nicest place to see the sea without leaving Tokyo, and after visiting the exhibitions or filming androids. The view of the city from around the Statue of Liberty and Odaiba Kaihin-koen, for me perhaps is the best sunset spot in all of Tokyo. This is where I try to spend the last sunset before departing from Tokyo, always knowing that it might be the last. This view is dominated by a bridge, which sometimes is also beautifully illuminated not by just the usual light, but rainbow colors. It is the Rainbow Bridge. The Rainbow Bridge is one of the major ways how you enter or leave Odaiba. You can reach Odaiba by water, as Odaiba is connected by multiple water bus lines, with some of the water buses looking like spaceships. Odaiba Kaihin-koen Pier is connected to Hinode Pier, and some cruises go as far as Asakusa. But all of those water buses aren't too frequent, and quite expensive for commuting. They are more about enjoying the journey. On a metro train of Rinkai Line, you can reach Odaiba via Tokyo Teleport Station, opened in 1996. At the time of recording, for me, Tokyo Teleport is the best name of a train station in the world. The name is a remnant of a plan to build a futuristic residential and business area to be called Tokyo Teleport Town. The name is a nod to progress in telecommunications. The plan was scrapped due to a burst of an economic bubble in 1992 in Japan. Although some of the futuristic telecommunication stuff did appear on Odaiba, such as Fuji TV Building, Miraikan Science Museum, one of the campuses of the National Institute of Advanced Industrial Science and Technology, AIST, and Tokyo Big Sight Exhibition Center. The main public transit of Odaiba is Yurikamome Line, squiggling around the island. The line opened in 1995. It features automatic trains with a grand view in the front. The line goes from Shimbashi Station with stops in Shiodama and Hinode, and then squiggles around Odaiba, passing by Fuji Terebi and Aqua City Odaiba, stopping at Odaiba Station there, passing by Tokyo Big Sight with a station under the same name, and terminating in Toyosu, an area mostly known for travelers for the new fish market that replaced Tsukiji. The train reaches Odaiba via the Rainbow Bridge. The line shares the lower deck with local car traffic. It is during this crossing where I once noticed something peculiar. With bridges as massive as the Rainbow Bridge, I assumed that no pedestrian traffic is allowed. The bridge to the Ruski Island in Vladivostok is like that. But from Yurikamome Line train I noticed some people walking there. The fact that you can walk the bridge I haven't seen advertised anywhere. Let's ask Junco Chihira android in Aqua City Odaiba to tell us about the bridge.
The Rainbow Bridge connects Odaiba and Chihira. The wall length of the suspension part is 918 meters, and the height above sea level is 524 meters. The two-story bridge supports an expressway on the upper deck and a regular road in the Yurikamome train line on the lower deck. Its nightly illumination shines beautifully in the Tokyo Bay.
She tells us some facts and tells us about Yurikamome, but not on how we can visit the bridge. After a quick search I found that yes, you can cross the bridge by walking, and found an official very retro-looking PDF with details. With that, I began the journey at Shimbashi Yurikamome station, where some Yurikamome souvenirs were sold that day. This time I disembarked one station before the bridge crossing at Shibaura Futo station. Shibaura is an industrial port area, and barely anyone boards or leaves the train here during the day. On the weekend, when the visit took place, the area is especially empty. A rather curious feature of the surrounding area is the presence of concrete walls about 1 meter and 70 centimeters in height. Those are there perhaps to stop the waves in case of a tsunami. Tokyo lays within a bay, but still is susceptible to the waves. Most impressive are the heavy metal gates that perhaps are supposed to close when the early warning system alarm is sounded. People should still be able to cross the walls to safety using the steps nearby, although this is not quite an accessible arrangement. By the way, slightly further away from a bridge in the industrial area there are still rainbow decorations. The first question that came to my mind when thinking about crossing the Rainbow Bridge by walking is how you get onto the bridge. The bridge has 2 levels. The upper level is a resort for the motorway called Metropolitan Shuto Expressway number 11 Odaiba route. Here is a sign to the Rainbow Bridge noticed in Roppongi, near Roppongi Hills. The lower level is a resort for local traffic and for Yurikamome trains. Because the bridge is rather high, the approach to the bridge in Shibaura creates a distinctive loop. The loop is easily noticeable on the city maps, local area maps, and Yurikamome maps. However, there are no pedestrian sidewalks on the approach to the loop. Instead, if you're a pedestrian or with a bicycle, you're supposed to go to the anchorage of the bridge, called such as it anchors the suspension cables. The entrance to the anchorage isn't telegraphed that much, and on the way it felt as I was about to trespass on the industrial property. There's a rather vintage and somewhat damaged sign, and the entrance seems slightly derelict as well. Most impressively, a part of the stairway was closed off as it collapsed. These kind of sights are not that rare in Japan, but I wasn't expecting it underneath one of the symbols of Tokyo. The entrance area, although noticeably dated, was nice and clean. The toilet too, and these garbage bins are incredibly 90s in style. The same can be said about the whole design. In winter, the bridge is open for pedestrian crossing from 10 in the morning to 6 in the evening. The crossing is free. At the entrance you choose which side you want to go, north or south, with south overlooking Odaiba. You get to and from the bridge level by an elevator with a nice view. The whole crossing seems quite accessible. By the way, if you're with a bicycle, you'll be given a strange contraption to put on a wheel, as you have to walk your bicycle the entire way. The entrance area slightly protrudes from the structure, so you can see the panorama of your walk. Despite the sidewalk being adjacent to the road and Yurikamome track, it wasn't too unpleasant, although perhaps this is due to the lower traffic on the weekend. A Yurikamome train. For some reason, a sign warning of the loop was backwards. Underneath the bridge on Shibaura side there is a small park and a football field. Nice surprise was an area around the tower from which a panorama can be seen without the small grating. In the distance, on the loop, there is a Yurikamome train, which is here now. The pillars on the side are decorated in pastel-looking rainbow colors. When the bridge was constructed, supposedly there were 2 opposing requirements. The bridge's main span must have been high and wide to accommodate for the cruise ships, but the supporting towers were limited in height to 150 meters, as the bridge lays within 9 kilometers from Haneda Airport. The resulting height of the towers is 126 meters. Since the 90s, the cruise ships became even bigger. Asuka 2, for example, doesn't fit under the bridge, so a new cruise port since opened in Odaiba, further in the bay, negating the need to pass under the Rainbow Bridge. Around the second tower, 570 meters away from the first, there was another panoramic view. From here, it's the best view on Dairoku Odaiba, number 6 fort, one of the Edo period Daiba forts. For the others, it's a short walk further. The bridge is going down, and then there is a view with no grating. From here, it's the best view on Odaiba with Daisan Daiba, the number 3 fort in the front, now connected to the land and turned into Daiba Park. On 3rd of July 1853, American fleet commanded by Commodore Matthew Perry stood at the entrance of Edo Bay. They were there to press free trade onto Japan with force. The fleet, named Black Ships in Japan, was to return next year. The danger was real. and so the shogunate requested the speedy construction of European-style forts to protect Edo Bay, and Edo itself, the seat of the shogunate, the military government of Japan. Within 8 months, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 5th and 6th Daiba were completed. 4th and 7th were completed later. The forts were named Odaiba, with a respectful O in the beginning. This is where the whole island takes its name from. Utagawa Hiroshige had included the view of the newly constructed Odaiba in his 100 views of Edo series of woodblock prints. It was quite risky, as Odaiba was a military installment, and drawings might not have been approved by the censors. The Daiba were equipped with cannons produced in Saga domain, which lays north of Nagasaki on Kyushu Island. Saga was quite technologically progressive. It is in Saga where Hisashige Tanaka developed a reverberatory furnace to be used in manufacturing of the cannons. He and his son had founded Tanaka Engineering Works in 1875, later renamed to Shibaura Engineering Works. In 1939, Shibaura Engineering merged with Tokyo Denki Company, with the names merging as well, Tokyo and Shibaura, resulting in Toshiba. This space-looking ship is Hotaluna Water Bus. It is designed by Leiji Matsumoto, an artist and a director of Galaxy Express 999 and Space Battleship Yamata, among other creations. Another ship of his design that can be seen in Tokyo is Himika Water Bus. In the middle of the bay, anchored was a small vessel called Fujime Maru, chartered, it seems, for recreational fishing. The folk at Fujime Maru perhaps were somewhat angry when Kaba amphibious bus was passing nearby. From the southern side there is a crossing under the road to the northern side. The view from the northern side is perhaps more interesting during the evening, with buildings and Tokyo Tower illuminated. Both roads go through the anchorage in the middle of the crossing, the Daiba anchorage, and both on northern and southern parts have a blocked-off elevator. It's outside there where there was something very curious. This is the sign for the Daiba anchorage, and here is a freeze frame with slight color correction. Underneath the blue tape there is Tenbo Furua, Kyukei Corner, Jihaki Corner, Denwa, Toire, elevator, observatory, rest corner, vending machines, telephone, toilet, elevator. Walking back to Shibaura, the same things was noted at other signs. Even more so, the sign for Shibaura anchorage had its own rest area and observatory taped over. So there were observatories on the anchorages. Have the observatories closed recently? Haven't seen them mentioned anywhere. The signs are very faded. Just looking at the colors, it seems they were there for more than 10 years at least. Живописный Bridge in Moscow was constructed with an observatory restaurant, but it was never opened due to the safety problems. Were the observatories on the Rainbow Bridge ever opened? The Rainbow Bridge seems fine apart from the pedestrian areas. The observatories must have been opened, because the bridge itself opened in 1993. Surely, otherwise there should have not been signs now. Why the pedestrian areas are so neglected anyway? The Rainbow Bridge is maintained by Tokyo Toll Kyowankoku, the port authority of Tokyo Metropolitan Government. It is adjacent to the port after all, and is an integral part of the surrounding area. It doesn't seem like it's a failing private business of sorts. On the way back to the elevator another sign was noted. Can't read the words, but the sign seems like a meeting area. Now, there was a mystery to solve. First attempt was to find any photos of the observatories. Only one photo from 2010 could be easily found, shot from the Shibaura anchorage. It explains that the observation deck is closed in general, but it was rented for a landscape painting exhibition then. The Japanese Wikipedia page for the Rainbow Promenade states that the observatories closed down when the bridge became free to cross in 2000. The page said citation needed, and so I grabbed a copy of the rough guide to Japan to see if there's a mention of the observatory in the 2011 edition that I've got. And there was a confusing surprise, because it stated that there are observation decks that cost 300 yen to visit. Or do they mean 300 yen for the bridge crossing? Also, they call Yurekamame a monorail, which is factually incorrect. So I grabbed another book I had, The Lonely Planet Guide to Japan, published in October 2009. It was one of the first books in English that I've bought, and at the time the travel books I bought just to fantasize about Japan, thinking that I wouldn't be able to visit. There was no mention of the Rainbow Bridge at all. The last book that I could grab was the Thomas Cook Guide to Japan, published in 2007, but because it is translated it's more of 2005 or 2006 vintage. There also was no mention of the Rainbow Bridge. This wasn't enough, and so I discovered the joy of borrowing books on Internet Archive, searching for guides for Tokyo. The Lonely Planet Guide from 1995 did not mention Odaiba at all. Makes sense, as the area was just being redeveloped. 1999 Time Out Guide has a few pages on Odaiba and mentions the walkway but not the observatories. The same goes for 2001 Kodansha Guide. It mentions the charge, even if by 2000 it supposedly dropped, but then it's okay for guidebooks to be a year or two late. 2001 Patrice Fosilo and Norika Araki Guide does the same, no observatories but a charge. 2005 Fodder's Japan, adorably marked by the original owner, only mentions the Rainbow Bridge in passing. 2005 Lonely Planet Tokyo Guide mentions the crossing of the bridge, no mention of the fee and no mention of the observatories. With that, it was back to the website search, and after looking for a combination of Rainbow Bridge and observation, with early dates and clicking a lot of links, something turned up. First, there were two pages that were marked by Google as being from February 1st, 2001. This is likely the default date of sorts, with the data probably belonging to an earlier date. Both of those websites mention the observatories. A great discovery actually awaited me at the first link once the date period was specified. The page is marked as August 15, 1999, and it not only describes the promenade and observatories, it has a photo from the Odaiba Anchorage Observatory. The final page seems to mark the time when the fee to cross the bridge was dropped, April 2000. The observatories are not mentioned at all. The last update to this retro-looking page is actually not that old, from 2013. In the end, it seems that the question of the derelict walkways and the missing observatories haven't rose before. It wasn't in the big news anywhere, and there are very few mentions online and even fewer photographs. The bridge opened in 1993, then crossing the bridge was 300 yen for adults and 100 for middle school children. The fee was dropped in April 2000. Immediately or soon afterwards the observatories closed down, with Shibaura Anchorage Observatory very occasionally rented. Rough Guide simply was copying unchecked facts for 10 years. Tokyo Port Authority does not have interest in the pedestrian side of the bridge, and they probably didn't want to spend too much at what they don't consider necessities during the recession of the past decades. The signs were simply taped over 20 years ago, and a very basic level of maintenance is given to the pedestrian areas ever since. Perhaps they would have closed the walkways, but maybe there's some sort of an obligation to provide a right-of-way. Initially, my thought was that the observatories perhaps can be reopened if they were to charge the visitors, but looking at the two photos, it should be admitted the view is not exactly competitive compared to Fuji TV or hotels in Hamamatsu-cho. The observatory in Shibaura can be repurposed as a renting space, but the one in Odaiba is too far away and once again too rarely visited to be used as a cafe or a restaurant. Once the money from the crossing was gone to save on cleaning and maintenance, the Odaiba anchorage was abandoned, even more abandoned than the Shibaura anchorage. Although, when editing the recordings on the video shot from Roppongi Hills, there was something curious. Look here, it's the Odaiba anchorage, and the yellow light is from the observatory, so it must be maintained if there is light. The deteriorating nature of the walkways, I'd say, would be giving a bad image to the Rainbow Bridge, even safety-wise, and to the Tokyo Port Authority and Tokyo in general, but there are so few visitors, so they probably don't care. Although, when visiting, there was a group of Japanese tourists who arrived in an organized bus tour to walk from Shibaura Anchorage and back. The Olympics too, at the time of publishing, are still being planned for 2021, and a number of Olympic venues are located in Odaiba. I'd say there are a few interesting options that could break this circle of misery. Theoretically, the Port Authority could set up a museum in the observatories, but then they already have a museum in Odaiba, and the investments would be high, with a very small number of visitors. Another thought that came to my mind is rather unorthodox. You see, it's the Rainbow Bridge after all. How about turning the observatories into LGBT+ friendly exhibition and event spaces? They could be publicly funded, they will attract attention for new visitors, and this would greatly positively affect the image of Tokyo. Since 2020, the special ward of Minato, a city-like entity from which the prefecture of Tokyo is comprised, started issuing partnership certificates, a municipal way to recognize a same-sex union. Minato is quite progressive. Now, it's not up to Minato alone to decide, as the bridge belongs to Tokyo Port Authority, but a lot of wards of Tokyo now issue partnership certificates, so on the metropolitan prefectural level it sounds doable. I'd say repair the stairs and open the Odaiba anchorage elevators. Even the 90s design could remain, just consider it as vaporwave. The small park underneath a bridge on Shibaura was occupied by fishing enthusiasts. This park is usually closed for the night, with one exception, Hatsuhinode, the first sunrise of the year. It definitely was a great journey, both the couple of hours spent on and around the bridge, and the sequential exercise in thoughts. Big night and good hugs everyone. Remember to subscribe here and on Patreon. And remember that purple is not a spectral color and appears only as a mixture of red and blue. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breath free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless tempest lost to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door.